Hello there. Welcome to Intercept CSA, the podcast, where we break harmful silence with truth, healing, and protection, one conversation at a time. I'm Inimfon Sampson, your host and guide for this conversation. Thank you for joining me. If you have parents or people caring for children around you, please make an extra effort to have them listening. Place your devices beside them. Invite them to lean in. Every bit of awareness counts for children. Now, a gentle reminder before we go any further. This conversation might be triggering. Remember to breathe, pause, and do what feels safe before you return. Before we begin, I want you to hear a poem I wrote for this episode. It is titled, If I Could Speak. If I could speak, I would say so many things, but my mouth is quiet and my heart doesn't know where my words went. I have been wearing my smile like a mask, like the children selling pure water in traffic, busy and bright, but inside there are things that trouble me, stories that sit on my tongue, filling up my mouth. When I try to shout, my voice gets swallowed by the cane marks on my back left by my mother after I dropped her glass cup yesterday. A cup that fell from my hands because when she went to get extra garri for uncle, I bent to keep his cup and he put his hand on the neck of my blouse, touched my flat chest, sending chills that forced my hands to release the water I brought to refresh him. When I try to shout, my voice gets swallowed by the voice in my head telling me I'm like bread that rat has nibbled on. Uncle has been nibbling bits of me, and now I believe I'm stale bread, waiting for someone to throw me out. When I try to shout, my voice gets swallowed by my mother's voice saying, my brother is all the family I have left. Instead of something tearing us apart, I will tear it apart. When I try to shout, my voice gets swallowed by eyes that look but do not see. I wrote that poem guided by the emotions and lived experiences of so many different people who have been sexually abused as children. People who have had to make that devastating internal bargain to either keep quiet or walk into the fire their disclosure will start. I wrote it too to show in a little way the realities of children in that situation. The subtle way that the abuser acts, the things the child remembers, like the fact that their mother would rather tear everything apart than lose our only family. The fact that the child likens themselves to the kind of pollution and damage done by rats to food. Just the many complexities that show in a condensed way the realities we will expand on in this episode. Last episode, we explored a very vital question. What does child sexual abuse mean really? Today we are diving into two of the hardest questions people face when trying to understand child sexual abuse. And that is, why don't children tell or report abuse? And why can't adults see it, even when it's right in front of them? In the last episode, in different ways, we touched on this idea. But in today's episode, we will peel it apart more carefully so that we can have an understanding that would actually influence our response to child sexual abuse in real life. We're beginning with the question, why don't children tell? And what better place to start than to repeat one of the most important things I hoped to leave with you in the last episode. And that is this: children are vulnerable. So first, children don't tell because they are children. And childhood by its nature is a vulnerable stage of life. The same way we say pregnant women are vulnerable, elderly people are vulnerable, people living with disabilities are vulnerable. In that same way, and maybe for different reasons, children are vulnerable too. And just to make sure everyone is carried along, what does it mean to be vulnerable? To be vulnerable is to be in a position where you are more likely to be harmed and less likely to be able to stop that harm yourself. It means that because of certain factors, like your age, like physical ability, or dependence on others, you're more open to harm or more open to attack. For example, imagine there is a robbery down the street in broad daylight. Most people trying to use that route would notice from seeing cars turn back that there's a problem. But someone who can't see or someone who has a sight impairment might keep walking into that situation, not because they are careless or have little value for their lives, but because they just cannot see what others can see. That means in their day-to-day life, they need more help to stay safe than others. That idea of vulnerability is same for children. And in episode 1, we talked about some reasons that children are vulnerable. We talked about their developmental stage, which affects their understanding and decision making. We talked about their limited life experience or knowledge. And then we talked about the power imbalance that naturally exists between them and the adult around them. So why does this matter so much? Why is it necessary that we all agree that children are vulnerable? And I'll say because I believe that we only truly protect what we believe needs protecting. Just pause and think about that. We only truly protect what we believe needs protecting. Let me explain that with a real life example. Have you noticed that every time a pregnant woman moves into your neighborhood, you both might never say hi to each other or anything, but once a pregnant woman moves in, unconsciously your mind takes note of her. And if I were to go further, if there were to be two people who travel without your knowledge on the street, one pregnant and the other not pregnant, I bet that you will likely notice the pregnant woman's absence faster than the person who isn't pregnant. And sometimes you may even be more concerned. You may start to ask people of our whereabouts. And why is that? It's because over time there's an unconscious image or an unconscious message that our brains have gotten from watching pregnant women being cared for, being helped, being protected, being prioritized, that has caused us to form an unconscious collective watch or watchfulness over pregnant women. Just think about it and you'll find scenarios that prove that this is true. So what does this tell us? I believe that this tells us that when we as a society and as a people decide consciously or unconsciously that a person or a group of people need protection, we actually look out for them. We rally around, we pause, we notice, we frown at people that mistreat them. We step in when we are needed. We show up. So I'm telling you that maybe, just maybe, one of the reasons we are failing to protect children or respond to child sexual abuse effectively is not because we don't care, but because we don't really see children and their vulnerabilities. And child protection or protection of any sort begins with seeing the vulnerabilities of the person or the people you are trying to protect clearly. So if you're trying to protect someone who is paralyzed, it means you have to see and understand paralysis as something that restricts movement. And from there, it will now make it easy for you to see that they need a wheelchair or a carrier in a different sense or in a different case. It will inform you that you shouldn't leave them without a carer at home, because if there's an emergency, they will need someone to move around. It will direct a lot of things, including your expectations, which is very important. So when it comes to children not reporting abuse, everything comes down to one thing. And that is the fact that we are talking about children. And being a child means that they are still dependent on people to make sense of this world and of their own experiences. Little children are still learning to form language, still trying to figure out right from wrong. Older children have been taught respect, but they don't know where to draw the line. They are still learning boundaries. They're still learning self-assertion. They're still learning personal authority. They're still learning how to navigate big emotions like guilt, shame, fear, something that a lot of us adults are still trying to process. So when you ask, why don't children tell? Please remember this. At the root of every reason I'll share today is one simple truth. They are still children. That's the foundation. Childhood by its nature comes with limits. Limits in understanding, limits in power, limits in emotional maturity, and those limits leave gaps. Gaps only adults can see and feel. And that's why children need us. Now that we've established that childhood isn't just a phase or a stage, but a state of deep vulnerability emotionally, socially, and developmentally, let's talk about what that actually looks like in real life. And we're beginning with one of the most important, common, and most misunderstood reasons. And that is the fact that sometimes children don't tell because they don't always recognize abuse as abuse. And there are a few reasons for that. It could be because the child is too young, like a baby or a toddler. It could also be that they have an intellectual disability that affects speech, that affects cognition. It could also be that they've never been taught about body safety or what abuse looks like, so they can't recognize it enough to be able to report it. Instead, they just feel confused or uneasy, but they don't understand why they feel like that. For example, imagine if a 6-year-old boy is left with a nanny and every time she bathes him, she touches his private areas and makes him touch hers. All the while she is smiling and doing ordinary playful things like chuckling or calling him fun names. Even if the child were to feel uneasy, that is a confusing situation because this is a seemingly ordinary experience, especially for children who have not been taught anything about body safety and privacy. For them, nothing differentiates this from the normal everyday games the nanny has been introducing. They might even tell them that, this is what all fun aunties are doing and all fun nannies are doing with the boys that they love. It could also be because the child has normalized the abuse. If the abuse has been going on for a while or it started very early, the child may believe that that's how all relationships work. It has become part of their reality. It's not something they see as wrong or something unusual enough for them to report. For example, there's an interesting case of a woman who had 4 children by her father. And because he started to abuse her from the earliest age with the knowledge of the mother, who was the midwife to the babies, she didn't know that she was being raped, or she didn't know that being raped or having her father's children was wrong or was abnormal. And finally, some children may not recognize abuse as abuse because of grooming. And do you remember what we said about grooming in the first episode? I said grooming is a manipulative process where an abuser works to gain trust, to lower defenses, and create opportunities for abuse to occur. But what is the outcome of that process beyond just the opportunity that has been created? The outcome is that the abuse becomes harder to detect because it is subtle, and now it is from someone that has grown in trust and someone that the child loves. And we're going to take a little time to look at grooming properly in this point, because grooming, like I said in the last episode, is calculated. It is not random. There are patterns. It might show up differently in different situations, but there's often a clear flow, a structure, no matter how subtle it is. And what is even most sad in this is that the people who should be protecting children, or we the people who should be protecting children, we often don't see the gaps, but abusers see gaps. And it is the first point of the grooming. So the first point of the grooming is that the abuser targets the child and targets the environment. And in that targeting, they're looking for gaps. And I don't just mean obvious things. It could be physical, emotional, social gaps. It could be that a child is going through something, a child that seems ignored, a child whose parents are trying, but they're overwhelmed, like low-income families, children living in poverty, children just in areas where everyone is out. So the abusers employing grooming tactics observe, they watch, and if it is at home, they watch the family dynamics. If it is in an institution like a church or school, they study how that environment treats children. Are there protection policies? Are there systems? Are there structures? Is there any supervision around children? So once they've made all of these findings, they make a move quietly. And after they've targeted the child and studied the environment, they work towards gaining access, like we said, and gaining trust. And this could take different forms based on the information they gathered from the observation in the environment and of the child. It could look like spending more time with the child. It could look like offering them gifts, favors, offering help. Sometimes they present things like, oh, they form this attachment and this bond between themselves and the child. You're the only one who really gets me. If they are married, oh, my wife is this kind of person. And I feel troubled at home. I relate with you. I was like you as a little child. All of these things that form this bond. So you're special. They capitalize on anything that they find as a gap. Like I said, it can feel like mentorship. It can feel like friendship. But one thing is sure, it is calculated. And it is based on the information that they've gathered in the observation phase. And right after they've gained access and gained trust, they go on to begin to meet those needs. They start feeling a need. They start feeling those emotional, physical, social, mental, whatever need they have found. They begin to feel it. They begin to show up in ways that feel kind. They might listen to the child's problems like I shared about the lesson teacher or the tutor last episode. They might be available for whatever it is that the child needs. And in that comfort, that is when that secret bond begins, where it's now we have each other. We are all we have kind of thing. This is our little thing. This is our little safe space. And right after this phase of meeting needs is the isolation phase. Once they have gotten to a point where the child feels dependent, they start to isolate the child. And this part is not obvious. It's not always obvious. It's not about dragging the child away or kidnapping them or any of those things. It is about slowly making them feel like they are the only people the child can trust. So the child begins to feel like this is the only person I can trust. So they encourage the child to keep secrets, things that nobody else will know. They start to say things like, don't tell your mom, she won't understand, or don't tell your friends, or those friends don't get you. They build it over time, and before you know it, the child has stopped reaching out to everyone else and is now centered in this abuser's world. And after that, they take on this next step, which is to sexualize the relationship. And just like in the case of isolation, it is subtle. Remember, all of these things happen very subtly. It might look like brushing a hand, just accidental touching, they hug for too long. They begin to throw in language, sexual language here and there, sexual jokes. They expose the child to sexual content. It could be a photo, it could be a video, just something that seems accidental, but is designed to push boundaries. It is designed to begin to feed the child with information that prepares the child to be abused. And once the abuse begins, it goes on to the final stage, which is the stage of maintaining control. The abuser starts to work hard to make sure that the abuse goes on and nobody finds out. And that might look like threats. If you tell anybody, nobody will believe you. I'm trusted in this house. You know I'm your uncle, or whatever relationship they've built. Or they capitalize on guilt. You enjoyed it. You touched me first. It's something you want. I see it in your eyes. They go on to things like bribery, promises, rewards, little treats, things that a child doesn't recognize it's them being taken advantage of. Emotional manipulation. They withdraw affection from the child. So a child who has grown to depend on this adult suddenly finds that maybe if they are resisting or anything, they begin to withdraw affection so that the child feels punished for pulling away. Because most children will try to pull away because it's uncomfortable, because something in them feels like this is not supposed to happen. So the abuser tries and employs different tactics depending on what they've observed. Remember, it's calculated, it's based on observation, it's based on what they've learned through the process. So they begin to capitalize on all of that to make sure that the child remains trapped. And talking about trapped and grooming still, let's talk about the vulnerabilities. Any child can be groomed, but there are certain factors that increase vulnerability. Abusers often target children who are isolated, who are lacking attention at home, children who are shy or just seeking affirmation, children who are going through something like a family divorce, or they've lost a parent, or they are struggling in school, children who are living with disabilities or emotional challenges. They also target children who are already part of their environment. So in those cases, they don't need to build on targeting the child and learning the environment and all of those things, because they've had enough time to have all of those things. So they just build on all the access they've had, whether it's through church or school or the family. And it's important that at this point that you learn and you get to know that grooming doesn't just happen to children. Sometimes it is the adults around the child that are groomed first, especially when the child has protective parents or caregivers who are alert, or whatever institution it is a system that is strong in their structure. Most times the system is grouped first. So the abuser might become someone who is very trustworthy in other things, builds a track record that everybody, that's a good person. That person can be in charge of the bus drivers in school, bus attendants, people who join the driver. They may show up as a trusted volunteer. They show up in church. They do everything they're needed for. They want to be in children's department. They want to do everything. They may show up as a friendly neighbor, as a man from church who just always comes around, just help around the house. I just want to make sure that I'm of service. Or a woman. It could be anything. Abusers are male, are female. They're different people. The one who comes and sponsors things for the family. The one who is dangling a better life, a better job offer, a better connection somewhere. There's just always something that the abuser, so in the same way that the abuser looks out for the needs that allow for him or her to gain access to the child's life or feel in the child's life, that's the same way that he or she also observes whatever are the needs or the entry point or the gaps, like we said, within a home, and grooms the adults from that point. They may even explore fear, where they say things like, oh, this child is safest with me. We have a lot of cases like that where a person comes and volunteers to be a child's driver. Or I apply that road every day to work. I can take them along with me. And before you know it, things are happening that the family is not aware of. So often, grooming feels like support. Feels like someone who is kind, feels like someone who won't stop paying attention. And I just want to say that sometimes when something feels too good to be true, it probably is, like I said last time. It probably is. So why does grooming work so well for the abuser? Because grooming meets needs. Human beings, especially children, we crave connection. And abusers can see that. Abusers know that. For example, imagine a single mother who has a young son. She's been trying, she's been doing her best, but the father is not around and this child is just carrying this weight, and the mother is also carrying this weight of a male presence, the absence of a male presence. And then one day this very kind, stable looking man shows up and offers to help mentor this boy. And imagine you're the mother and you see your child who has been in a state you wouldn't have wanted them to be. You see that child light up. You see that child succeed at something, because often the abuse will not start immediately. So it will look like a successful relationship is happening or is taking place. Now, what would happen when the man and the child begin to spend long hours together, maybe at the man's place or at any other point? You won't raise an eyebrow at that, because this man is consistent, this man is helpful. Then if out of the blues your child starts to withdraw from him and the man says, oh, don't mind him, I've just changed my methods. I used to be very gentle with him. Now I just think I should add a little more discipline. This happens with all the children I mentor. Once this happens, don't worry, we'll come out of it. So even when you would have observed signs, because the abuser is very close, he's quick to give you answers. He's quick to throw scent off. So you often hear abusers say things like, don't worry, that one is just adolescent that is stopping. So you see a child that all of a sudden is very rude to an uncle or an auntie or somebody who just comes, they begin to tell you, don't worry, it's adolescence, it's how these children behave when they get to this age. It throws scent off the signs that would have revealed to you that something is likely going on with your child or with the children in your care. They could even go as far as saying sometimes children make up wild stories. This child could wake up tomorrow. So they can prepare you ahead of time for when disclosure happens so that you don't even have the space to be able to receive it. And what I mean by that is that I started to say sometimes they will come and tell you things like, I have changed, still the same, I've changed my methods, but they won't stop there. they will go further to let you know that in case this child comes and says it's no longer coming, just know that children try to do things like that. Children, when they get to this point of the mentoring process, they try to escape it by lying. And very likely, if you don't have this awareness information in order to be able to sit your child down and have an honest conversation, let the child know that I'm on your side. I want to hear why this is not comfortable for you. If anything is not comfortable for you, it's important to me, your carer, your mommy, your daddy, whoever it is that you are to the child, that I know that except you have that information, you will most likely be on the side of the abuser. And this is how grooming works. Grooming exploits needs. Grooming exploits trust. People show up as helpers, as mentors, as friends, and they manipulate affection until you are confused enough to trust the wrong person. And now imagine that is an adult. For children, it is much harder because children are naturally trusting. When someone gives them attention, they respond with affection, with loyalty. So even if they've been taught about body safety, that desire to feel loved, that desire to please is still a very strong desire in a child. And when the abuser pulls away, children don't think, don't worry, another uncle will come, another auntie will come, another person that likes me will come. They feel as though, what did I do wrong? And in that process, they begin to think, what can I do to make this person who used to love me again? So there is a lot of complication in the grooming process. A lot of things that make it hard for abuse to shine through, for you to be able to see that this is abuse, for the child to be able to recognize that this is abusive enough to report the abuse. Sometimes children don't report abuse because the stakes feel too high, too many complications. So the abuser could be threatening to kill. It could be, I will kill your parent, I will frame your family for something. It could be as bad as a story that I heard where the older sister was enduring abuse because the stepfather had said if she doesn't comply, he will begin to abuse her younger siblings instead. So abuser can also threaten to stop financially supporting the family, and a child can decide to take on the responsibility of shielding everybody from the abuser by remaining quiet. A child might not report because they don't want to tear the family apart. They know the implication of everyone knowing that, oh, it is our cousin who is doing this, or it is this person here, or it's the GO in the church, or it's this. So they don't want to disrupt things. So to keep everything together, they carry the emotional responsibility of silence. Sometimes children don't tell because they fear punishment. Especially if the child was abused while they were doing something wrong. Like if they went to someone's house without telling their parents and the abuse happened there, they may not want to mention it out of the fear of punishment. Or if they've taken if the abuse happened a while ago and they are just finding the courage or the thoughts is just coming to them to report, they might not feel like anybody will believe it was abuse because they didn't come home straight and say it. Some might even also be afraid that saying that they were touched will lead to punishment because it will not be seen as abuse, but as them having done something with somebody, something sexual with somebody. Sometimes children also will not report abuse because they are afraid of not being believed. And that is a very heavy fear, especially when somebody who is hurting them is someone that others trust or admire, because now they're dealing with, remember we're talking about children are reporting abuse because the stakes are high. So right now they think, why would anybody believe me over this person? And what is the risk of me disclosing this abuse and not being believed? What is going to be interpreted out of this situation? Like it's just a lot of mental work for a child. And this is a child who has also likely had the abuser plant thoughts in their minds, like nobody's going to believe you and all of those things. And children might not also tell if they've seen adults ignore similar stories like this, or if they themselves have been called liars before. It just makes it worse. So even when they know that something is wrong, the fear of being doubted or being accused of making it up can be enough to keep children quiet. And childhood itself makes this all the more complicated because children are still trying to figure out trust in their own voice. So that when they can't tell, they are closed off from the adults who should tell them, is this just your mind or is this something real? So if children believe that speaking up is going to make adults upset or the people around them not take them seriously, then they're not going to share it. And being dismissed is a very strong emotion to deal with. Something that can completely shame and silence a child forever. So sometimes children don't also tell because they love the abuser, which is very sad. But a parent, a sibling, a teacher, a caregiver, a nanny, like we call them often, might be the abuser, and a child could deliberately or be left with no other option than to stay silent in order to protect that person and keep the relationship even if it is unhealthy. Sometimes children also will not tell anybody because they will not believe the first time. And actually, most people have hinted at the abuse as children. It's just that when they were trying to speak up about it in the past, they were either ignored, blamed, or punished. So they learned that it's safer to stay that way, safer to be quiet. Sometimes children don't tell because they don't know who is safe to tell. Because this could be a child living with extended family members or other people they cannot share this information with. It could also be that the only adults available are people who are related to the abuser. Like if someone is living with their sister and their sister's spouse is being abusive, or someone is living with a brother and their whoever it is, or an uncle, it could be somebody that is in a situation where the only remaining adults, the only adults they have access to is an adult that is directly connected to the abuser. Another reason that children don't tell is because they're afraid that they will be blamed. They'll be told that they're the ones that caused it, they're the ones that encouraged it, and that they deserve it. Like abusers will already tell children, you wanted this. If you didn't come to my room every day with your short skirt, I wouldn't have ever thought about it. So the child already internalizes all of this information, especially older children. Internalizes all of this information, and that could keep the child silent. That could keep the child from speaking. Sometimes children don't tell because they don't want to get anyone in trouble, especially those with a sensitive or a loyal nature. They just keep quiet because they want to protect the abuser from the consequences, even if they are still hurt. So they may feel just this sense of responsibility for the abuser's well-being. And I think this still ties back into if it is someone that they love, someone that they want to protect, someone that they want to make sure. Some children know that, okay, an arrest is in view. This person can be arrested. This person can be punished severely, so they may keep quiet as a result of that. Sometimes children don't tell because they were never taught that they have the right to say no. So if they don't think that this was something they had a choice over, then it's not something worth reporting. Sometimes children also don't tell because they have emotionally disconnected from the event. And this is called disassociation in psychology. It is a trauma response, a defensive mechanism that the mind uses to survive something really bad by detaching itself from the experience, even while the body is still going through it. It's almost like a child is floating above their own body. And the best way I'll describe this is think of those Nollywood films where the ghost of the actor steps out of their body while others are struggling to revive it. That gory image, as gory as it is actually a helpful way to describe or picture disassociation, because it shows how a child exists in this split reality in order to survive. So most times children who disassociate stop trying to get help. They don't try to tell anyone. I may not even remember the abuse clearly because they checked out. They're no longer present in it, and they now begin to experience memory gaps. We'll talk more about these psychological defense mechanisms like denial, rationalization, different things that children slip into to cope with the abuse. We'll talk about it in later episodes. Sometimes children also don't tell because they don't want to relive the events. Telling means remembering, and remembering hurts, so children avoid speaking because it's too painful to go back to the experience, especially when they don't trust that someone would support them through that process or that someone would not brush them aside. Sometimes children don't tell because they've learned shame. And I feel like we forget that children are part of our world, and even though we think they don't see or understand anything, children feel and see shame. When we make things into taboos, children take note of them as areas of failure. And when something happens in those areas, they can feel shame. So if we say that sex is a taboo, this is not even some, we don't even put it in context. We don't even try to say, okay, there's a time it's just a taboo. When we've communicated all these things in very strong terms, by the time anything touches sexuality, or in the case of male to male abuse, where we've already talked about same-sex stigmas, we've communicated it so strongly. By the time a boy is abused by another boy, it might be hard for that child to say something, because he has already learned that this is an area of shame. This is an area of failure. Children who are also older pick up ideas like the goldenness of virginity and purity. Ideas like who is a bad boy and a bad girl, and they quietly feel the shame that follows the kinds of people that we label with those names. The way that everybody looks at them, judges them, the teenager that the whole neighborhood knows is sexually active, and how everybody treats them. Children observe all that. And when somebody touches them, they may not have the language for it, but they still feel shame. Sometimes it's not even what is said. It is the way that the abuser walks away or treats the child after the act, like a toy that they are done with, that drives the shame. And you know that we were built regal and powerful. Inside of us, there's an excellence and a divine brilliance that recognizes when we're insulted or violated. And yes, there are many psychological ways to explore shame. But I just want to draw your attention to the fact that abuse devalues a child. It breaks down someone who was built for excellence, someone who was built for beauty, for dignity. It breaks them down in such a way that even though they don't have language, inside them, they feel it. And sometimes, this is a very important point, sometimes children don't tell because their bodies responded. And it took me a long time to understand something that now feels so basic. And that's the fact that if someone sexually stimulates you, your body might respond. Not because you wanted it, not because you asked for it, but simply because your body is built to react. I share more about this in my memoir, but I want to say it clearly here. Many children didn't speak up. Many children are not speaking up. Many adults are still silent because their body's reaction made them feel like they had consented, like their minds were lying. Even when they know that they didn't want it, their body feels like a witness against them. And no matter how much it hurts that someone violated them, many people still haven't been able to grieve, because even though their mind was screaming or they said no with their mouth, their body seemed to enjoy it. And to those people, especially the ones who are adults now, I want to say this plainly. Our bodies are built to respond to sexual touch, even when it's unwanted or harmful. The body doesn't always know the difference between pleasure and violation. The body is built to react. Everybody responds to abuse differently. Some people talk about how their body shuts down in alignment with their minds. But just because your body reacted doesn't mean it wasn't abuse. Boys, girls, men, and women's bodies can respond to unwanted touch. And that doesn't mean it was okay. It doesn't mean it was wanted. So it was abuse even if your body responded. It was abuse if you were a child and the other person was older, was in a position of power, or was someone who should have protected you. It was abuse if your mind said no, even if your mouth didn't get the chance to. It was abuse if you were afraid, if you were confused, if you froze and didn't know how to say anything at all. It was abuse even if they told you it wasn't. it was abuse, even if you spent years wondering if maybe, just maybe, if it was your fault or if it was abuse at all. I want you to remember that abuse can manipulate a child's body and mind. And in that deeply violating experience, both pleasure and shame can exist at the same time. And that confusion is something that is rarely spoken about, but is one of the biggest reasons many children and many people don't report abuse in childhood. If you forget anything, just remember, fun things don't leave you broken. Fun things don't leave you afraid. And fun things could not have left you ashamed. And lastly, sometimes children don't tell because they hope the abuse will stop on its own. They hope if they ignore it, it will go away. And sometimes they convince themselves that it is a one-time event, or that the abuser will soon give up, he will lose interest, or they will lose interest. And most times, abuse doesn't stop on its own. It is not a one-time event. The abuser doesn't lose interest. And often abuse will last for as long as the abuser lives and as long as the abuser is in contact with the children. And almost all the time, while all of this happens, the adults who surround this child rarely see nor are able to protect the child. So that leads us down to the question, why can't adults see abuse? And perhaps more clearly and more personally, why do we miss abuse even when something seems wrong? Why do we explain it away? Why do we stay silent, and why do we do nothing? And that question is very heavy, especially because it stands so closely to the realization that children are left just wishing that something as devastating as abuse would go away on its own, rather than having systems that swiftly step in to rescue them or intercept the situation. It's sad that children are actually left wishing. As we navigate why adults can't see, I want to remind you again that shame is not our goal. Our goal is to bring a conversation to you that you've likely never had. And with this information, remember that I have faith in you. We have faith in you at Intercept CSA. We trust that you will do what it takes to act wisely for the children in your care. We trust that by joining and by listening into these episodes, this is a sign of your commitment to learn and unlearn the things that keep children bound to silence. So why can't adults see? Because seeing is not just about the eyes, it is about the nervous system. That's the first reason. Seeing abuse is not just about the eyes, it is about the nervous system. And let me explain this as simply as possible. Think of the nervous system like your body's operating system. It is that system that's always running in the background. It is always making sure things are going the way that they should go. It is in charge. It is the system that is sending information from various parts of your body to your brain, from your feet. It's sending information to your brain that you're about to move. Your brain is receiving it and processing it and then sending it from your brain back to your body to tell you what to do. So there's this constant communication. Is like the Walkman in your body's relationship. So let's say you walk into a room and you see a tape curled up like a snake. Your nervous system is the one that sends that first alert to your brain that says this is dangerous. And before you even have time to think about it, it is your nervous system that makes your body jump from one place to the other place to keep you away from that danger. Later, it is also your nervous system that slows down and double checks that fact with your brain and comes to the conclusion that, oh, that wasn't a snake, that was just a tape. And this system does not just deal with fear or reflexes. It is also your body's capacity. It is your nervous system that decides what your mind can handle and what it can't. And just like normal phones, I remember we said it's like an operating system, and just like normal phones or gadgets, when your nervous system cannot handle the weight of reality, it can freeze, crash, or deny information. We already see this happening most times, just that we may not be able to recognize that is what is happening there. We often see this kind of shutting down in grief. We see people that refuse to acknowledge that someone that they love has died, even though they are looking at the body, even though they are at the burial. It's just like their minds have just been hit with the reality that their bodies cannot receive. So they shut it out completely. So this is what connects the nervous system to why so many adults cannot see. When something threatens our worldview, what we used to believe was possible, what we used to believe could happen to us, when it threatens our sense of control, like I was in charge of this. Mothers would say, I thought I was doing all the right things. Fathers would say, I thought I was protecting this family. When something threatens your relationships, I thought I knew my brother. I thought I knew my sister. This nanny, I've known this child since he was a little girl. She grew up here. When something threatens your emotional safety, sometimes your body shuts it out and does not allow your mind to process it. And that's why many times people can be standing right in front of abuse but cannot register or really see it. Their nervous system cannot afford to allow that reality to come in. They don't have space for that reality. So seeing abuse is not just about having eyes, it is about having capacity. It is a question of whether you have made room in your body for big challenges. Can your body take hard things? It is about the fact that you have not built a reality where you only believe good things will happen. And this is not about lacking faith or being negative. It is about making sure that life doesn't surprise you. That's what capacity is about. It is about setting systems. It is about having something that steadies you so that if you ever walk into a reality where a child needs you to be a safe, present, comforting adult, you don't crumble. You won't be able to regulate yourself. You'll be able to know that it's not the end of the world. You'll be able to take clear-headed steps and respond wisely. And you'll be able to remember that there's a whole and complete life after abuse. A life that will still be beautiful, a life that will be powerful, a life that will be missing in nothing. And I know that we like to believe that parents, caregivers or teachers, different people who love children and care for them are always ready. And they always know what to do in every situation affecting children. That they can handle it. But the truth is that most people have not built that kind of capacity in their body. And if we get a bit reflective here, many of us have seen this play out in different contexts. Maybe even with ourselves. But the good news is that capacity can be built. And that's exactly what you're doing every time you listen to this podcast. You're building the capacity to see and respond. And that can be life-changing for a child. You're building the capacity to sit with hard things. To not run away from hard conversations or run away from hard things because it has surprised you out of your reality. Another reason that adults don't see or can't see is because we've been conditioned to look away from things that are uncomfortable. From childhood, many of us have been taught to ignore things that don't make you comfortable. So when somebody dies, we don't talk about it. Anything that we just have that kind of culture, I think. When something very tough happens, we try to move on as fast from it as possible. It's too sad, just let it go. And it plays out when we also encounter abuse. Because when something disturbing, like walking in and seeing your husband with your daughter happens, or a neighbor notices a nanny that every time the mother goes to work, you somehow just happen to see that this nanny has a behavior around this child. Our natural response is, leave somebody's house, let it go back into your house. Our natural response is to not talk about it, don't engage it. We've been trained to unsee things that threaten our peace. And abuse is one of those things. So many times when we see it, when we feel this thing in our guts telling us you should look deeper, this looks like something is going wrong in that place, we just move on. So sometimes that's how we don't see. that we've been conditioned to look away from something that might reveal things we don't want to deal with. Another reason that we don't see is that we don't know what we are looking for, which is the essence of this podcast. Because knowledge gives you lenses, and you cannot recognize what nobody has ever taught you to name. If you don't know what grooming looks like, or what a child looks like when they are trying to bite their tongue, when they are trying to survive, if you don't know what shame looks like in children, you'll be looking at a child who used to run and play, and rather than ask them, how are you, or what happened to you, you will nag them about who they used to be. You will accuse them of things they've not done. And rather than draw that child who needs help close, you will end up chasing them, sometimes back into the hands of the abusers. And sometimes why we don't see is because we are looking through the wrong lens. Last time I mentioned that there's no mental profile, there's no profile for the abusers. What we're looking for is not what is really happening. We're looking for one dangerous looking situation where thinking about that stranger that we allowed to carry our child that day. We're looking for the kinds of people who look like people that in our minds can perpetuate abuse or violence. We're not looking for our siblings. We're not looking for that favorite uncle that comes. We're not looking for that teacher that has suddenly volunteered to drop off junior after school. We're not looking at that choir leader or any of the relationships that are close to us. And most times, these are the places that the harm is happening. So when our lens is wrong, our lens is faced in the wrong direction, that's how we miss key things. We miss the information that would have led to disclosures or to rescuing a child on time. And sometimes we don't see because we don't look twice. Life has become so busy. Everybody is on the road. Everybody's trying to live. We only live once. We need to survive. The economy is hard. A lot of things are taking our attention, and seeing takes attention. You need attention to see, and we are distracted. We are managing so much. We are juggling so much. We don't pause long enough to be able to listen and investigate a child's silence, to observe it. We don't revisit that uncomfortable feeling that we had. Why did we greet that child and it felt like that? We don't have the space to navigate or process that emotion, because often our guts, our instincts pick up these things. So we walk into a room and a child is in a compromising position with the nanny, but we have another place to be. We just came to leave instructions for the baby. So we're already on our way to walk. The life is already happening. Sometimes in that car or in transit, that scene zooms back again, but we don't sit with it. So we notice things and we move on, and we can't see because we didn't stay long enough to notice them. And sometimes adults can't see because grooming works on adults too, like I said. They can be looking at abuse in front of them and it's confusing. For example, I listened to a story about a survivor who had an uncle that used to abuse her once in every year, because that was the only time they would go to the family house in another city. And at some point, the family wanted to make a transition. They wanted to move from where they were to another place. And this uncle came. Remember, I said abusers are very helpful, very volunteer for things. Not to say that everybody that is volunteering for things, but it's worth paying close attention to anybody that is overly helpful, overly present, just to make sure that this is genuine and there's no other thing that is happening that is sinister. So the family moved. The uncle offered that he was going to arrange the entire thing. They wanted to move to a different city. He said no, that he has a place that is very close to where he stays. He got them a job. The uncle literally got everybody settled into the city. So a child who used to experience or be exposed to this once in a year, the grooming abuser created an opportunity that now the child was just a stone throw from where he lives. So for years, this abuse went on and went on and went on. And the survivor shares that it was on her mother's deathbed that she got to tell the mother that this had happened, and the mother apologized and said that something in her kept saying that something in her felt that may have been happening, but this was a good person. This person was available for them. This person was supporting financially. So yes, a grooming, that need meeting abuser, that person who is available for everything, he could exploit trust and Adults can be looking at something that would naturally have flagged off as something wrong, and because of who is wearing that face, who is behind that mask, they are unable to see it. We also miss abuse because we trivialize childhood experiences. We treat children lightly because they're not the ones, especially here. We just have this mindset: what are you paying for? What is making your life difficult? All you have to do is just go to school and come back. All you have to do is just, everybody does everything for you. What do you need? But children are a part of life, and life deals all of us hard things. Life does not select whether we are big or small or tall or short. If you don't make a conscious effort to shield and protect, as well as investigate what hard thing your child is trying to manage, you will miss abuse. And sometimes we also can't see abuse because we've held on to a fairy tale view of life. We believe that if we raise our children right, if we protect them, if we pray enough, then we can keep everything evil away. But protection or prevention or true preparation is not about wishful thinking. It is contingency planning. It means asking the hard questions before crisis shows up, planning for the unthinkable. So we have to ask ourselves, what isn't here now but could come? That's real preparation. We've set up all of these things. We've built a good gate. We've done this. How about we still have the number of the police? How about we still have this? How about we still have this? Just to make sure that if after all the fences we have put up, we fail to plan for the person who probably slips in like water and goes through cracks we did not see. So contingency planning is real preparation. Is planning that goes beyond what we can see to what have we not seen? How do we plan to be able to meet what we have not seen, or what is not here but could still come? How many of us as intending couples too, as parents, as leaders, actually sit down and ask, how do we abuse-proof our homes? Do we make sure that our homes are not prone to abuse, that we don't have leakages, we don't have systems that are allowing for children to be exploited? How many couples ask themselves, what will we do if our child is harmed? How will we respond as a family? What if it's someone we know or even love? What if it's your sibling? Will you be okay knowing I will still pursue justice? So do we go there to questions like that? Do we dare to? How many of our organizations have policies that actively protect children, not just documents that are sitting in a file? During church tarry nights, who is walking around the church premises to make sure that there are no areas where abusers are exploiting? How many schools have open door policies or policies that ensure that all conversations, all interactions with children happen in places where they can be observed and interrupted? Who follows up on these things after that initial New Year expectations? After we've set all those rules and set all those plans, who follows them up? Because most times our child care or child protection strategies, they end at us setting goals. And often we don't set goals at all because we exist in a bubble. And people or systems that exist in bubbles fail children because bubbles can't hold pressure, and life and abuse represents pressure. Sometimes we don't see children because we have spiritual or cultural beliefs that blur our vision. And a classic example is that sometimes a child is reporting abuse, but we don't see a violation. We are seeing sin. And there's a lot I can say there. But how would you comfort someone if you believe that this is sin that you're dealing with? So all of that blurs our vision from actually seeing the main issue, from being able to sweep in and help, from being able to intervene accurately, from being able to respond to that child accurately. Because we end up talking about all the wrong things. We end up talking about all the wrong things when our vision is blurred, when our vision is tainted by different things. When we're talking about virginity, we have crazy stories of people telling their children that upon disclosure, you are now second hand. Crazy stories. So the focus has shifted from a child who needs comfort, a child who needs care, to a child who is receiving or being re-traumatized by the words of our response to the disclosure. And sometimes we don't see anything, or we can't see because we don't want it to be true. And in this case, it's not that we can't see, it's that we see, we suspect something, but the cost of accepting that truth is too high. So we look again, this time through denial, and then we unsee what we saw. Because to see it will be to accept responsibility. It will be to accept the responsibility of intervention, to accept the responsibility of confronting the difficult truth of what had happened, who were involved, to confront the shame or whatever it is that we feel in that moment, to confront the pain, and then to carry and bear accountability and take the responsibility of changing the environment that allowed the abuse to happen in the first place. So to wrap this episode up, I want to say that to truly see children and protect them, we have to ask ourselves, or you have to ask yourself personally, do you have the courage to see? Are you present enough to see? Are you willing to see? Are you knowledgeable enough to see? Are there other ideas that are blocking your ability to see? Like believing that everyone is a saint, or everyone who attends church with you can come to your house and sleep with your children on the same bed, and that is safe. Are you emotionally ready to see? Because without answering all these questions, even the clearest signs will still remain invisible. Thank you for listening to today's episode. We shared a lot of heavy things, some of which you may have needed time, or you will still need time to digest. But I want to assure you that you're doing the hard work of building your capacity. You're doing the hard work of building your capacity to prevent, to intervene, and respond to child sexual abuse effectively. And you can't imagine how much of a difference that is making. Exploring why children don't tell and why adults can't see was an important next step for us, because until we see, we can't take action. So I hope that this conversation helped you understand children more deeply. I hope that it helped you see how silence grows, or silence begins, how shame grows, and how it is easy for us to miss what is right in front of us. For this week's call to action, I want you to grab a journal and a pen and sit quietly with these questions. If you ever heard that your child or any child close to you had been sexually abused, how would you respond? And if it has already happened, how did you respond and why? Picture that child, even if they're older or no longer around you. Then ask yourself, this is for the parents or the carer or people who are around children who have experienced a situation where a child has already experienced abuse or disclosed abuse. Picture that child even if they're older and are no longer around you, and then ask yourself, what signs did I miss? Just let it be something that you think about without shame or holding back. And when you've answered all of those questions, ask yourself again, what do my answers reveal about what I still don't fully understand about childhood or about child sexual abuse? This week's call to action is a gentle self-task, but it's a transformative one. And if anything rises to the surface as you process that or process these questions, whether you have a question to ask or a regret that just comes or something that you want to speak to us about, we are here. Write us. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Intercept CSA, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Remember, together we can intercept abuse and protect the children we all care about. Together we can intercept child sexual abuse for the future. Until next week, see you.